All right, today we're going to dive into an idea that might just change how you think about money forever. The big idea is this: when it comes to your finances, how you act is way more important than how smart you are. It's a concept that pretty much flips everything we've been taught about wealth on its head.
So let me just start with a quick question. I want you to picture two people. One is a janitor, spent his life sweeping floors. The other is a top executive, MBA from Harvard. Now, who do you think ends up wealthier? Seems like a no-brainer, right? Well, the answer is probably not what you think.
So, first up, let's meet Ronald Read. He was a philanthropist, an investor, and for most of his life, a janitor and a gas station attendant. He lived a really quiet life out in rural Vermont, bought his house for like 12 grand, and his biggest hobby was chopping firewood. You get the picture. A simple, humble guy.
And then we have Richard Foscone. This guy was the polar opposite. Harvard educated, a big shot at Merrill Lynch, basically a giant in the finance world. He was so successful, he actually retired in his 40s to focus on philanthropy. He borrowed a ton of money to expand his huge 18,000 square foot mansion. We're talking 11 bathrooms, 2 swimming pools, 7 garages, the whole 9 yards. Okay, so this is where the story takes a wild turn. Ronald Read, the janitor, quietly built up a fortune of over $8 million. And when he died, he left most of it to his local hospital and library. Meanwhile, Richard Foscone, the high-flying executive, he went bankrupt after the 2008 financial crisis. He literally told a judge he had no income, and that massive mansion, it was sold off in a foreclosure auction. So what on earth happened here? How is that even possible? The story of these two men really gets to the core of what it actually takes to build wealth. And it has almost nothing to do with how many degrees you have or your IQ score. It's something else entirely.
And that brings us to the central idea for today. Financial success isn't a hard science like physics or chemistry. It's a soft skill. What that means is a total genius who can't control their emotions can end up a financial disaster. But an everyday person with just a few good habits can become incredibly wealthy.
Now, to really understand this, we have to look at some of the hidden forces that are always at play with money. Let's start with the two big ones: luck and risk. They're really just two sides of the same coin. And honestly, they're way more powerful than we ever want to admit.
Let's talk about Bill Gates. Yeah, we all know he's a genius, no question. But you can't tell his story without talking about luck. I mean, pure dumb luck. Back in 1968, he just happened to go to Lakeside, one of the only high schools in the entire world that had a computer.
And just to put that into perspective for you, in 1968, there were about 303 million high school-aged people on the planet.
And out of those 303 million, only about 300 of them went to Lakeside School. Bill Gates' opportunity was, and this is not an exaggeration, literally 1 in a million. That's not just about being smart. That's insane luck. But here's the flip side. For every story of incredible luck like Bill Gates, there's a story of terrible risk. Meet Kent Evans. He was Gates' best friend at Lakeside, just as smart, just as passionate about computers, and they were planning to start a company together. But Kent got hit by the other side of that coin, risk. He died in a mountaineering accident before he even graduated high school. It's just a really powerful reminder that things are never as good or as bad as they seem. So, if luck and risk play such a huge role, what can we actually control? Well, the answer lies in one of the most powerful forces in the universe, time. And it's the real secret behind Warren Buffett's incredible success.
We all think of Buffett as this master stock picker, and he is. But his real superpower is time. Get this. Out of his massive, $84.5 billion net worth, over $84 billion of it was earned after his 50th birthday. His skill is investing, sure, but his secret is that he's been doing it consistently for over 75 years. That's compounding in action, and it's almost like magic. And if you need more proof about the power of time, just look at Jim Simons. He's a hedge fund manager, a math genius who has earned an unbelievable 66% annual return. That's 3 times better than Buffett. But his net worth is about a quarter of Buffett's. How is that possible? It's because Simons didn't even start his fund until he was 50. He had less than half the time for that money to grow.
Good returns that you can sustain for a long, long time will always, always beat amazing returns that flame out early. So all of this leads to a really crucial point. Getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two completely different things. They are not the same skill. Look, there are a million ways to get rich. Lottery, crypto, real estate, whatever. But there's only one way to stay rich, and that's all about survival. Staying wealthy has nothing to do with taking bigger risks for bigger returns. It's all about survival. It's a weird mix of being frugal with what you have and being paranoid that you could lose it all in an instant. The whole goal is to just stick around long enough for that compounding magic to do its thing. The story of Jesse Livermore is such a tragic, perfect example of this. In 1929, he made what would be $3 billion today by shorting the market crash. He was one of the richest men in the world, but he couldn't hold on to it. He just kept making bigger, riskier bets until he lost everything. His story ended in tragedy. He was a genius at getting wealthy, but he had no idea how to stay wealthy.
So how do you actually build this survival skill? Okay, first you have to be financially unbreakable. That means having enough cash on the sidelines so that a crazy market doesn't force you to sell your investments at the absolute worst time. Second, you have to plan on your plan failing. No plan survives contact with reality, right? So you have to build in a margin of safety for when things go wrong. And third, you need to be both an optimist and a pessimist. Be optimistic about the long term, but paranoid about all the short-term disasters that can stop you from ever reaching it. At the end of the day, what this all comes down to is a simple shift in how you think. You don't need the most perfect, mathematically optimal strategy. You just need a strategy that you can actually stick with when things get crazy. The goal isn't to be some coldly rational robot. It's just to be pretty reasonable. Because reasonable is realistic, and it's what keeps you in the game long enough to win. So, what's the bottom line here? First, your behavior with money is way more important than how smart you are. Second, finance isn't a hard science, it's a soft skill. Third, you gotta play the game of survival by respecting luck and risk. Fourth, use the incredible power of time and compounding. And finally, always remember that getting rich and staying rich are two totally different games. And all this leads to one final question, and it might be the most important one. If the goal isn't just to get the biggest pile of cash, then what's wealth really for? What is the absolute highest dividend that money pays? It's this: control over your time. The ability to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. That freedom to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want, that is priceless. That is the real return on your savings. Thanks for watching The Explainer.